Blessings, friends. It's your favorite queer NB priestess, Paisley Parvati Devi, and it's been 2 years since I visited India in March of 2023. I'm so excited to relive the experience with you. So if you watch this channel or are familiar with my work, you know that I am a yoga instructor and Ayurvedic health counselor. And I decided to go to India because going to the place where these ancient sciences originated is a rite of passage for yoga instructors. And I found an amazing retreat called the Yogini's Journey that was for all female travelers to go visit goddess temples and other sacred divine feminine sites around India. So of course we flew into Delhi first, the main international hub, and this was at the airport. The hotel we stayed at was very nice, and it was already 80 degrees at about 7 in the morning, which was a nice change of pace from the March weather in Ohio. And that first day in Delhi, we went right away to the first goddess temple, not too far from where we were staying, which was a Kali temple. And the Ganges River, which is pronounced Ganga in India, flows across Northeastern India and is considered very sacred in both yoga and Hinduism. There are many, many offshoots of Ma Ganga, and all along the river, people use the holy water to bathe and wash their clothing, ask for blessings and purification, and also make offerings to her. So this first Kali temple was along one such offshoot, and we were not able to take any videos or photos inside of the temple, even though there are temples truly everywhere in India. In order to be respectful of the folks that are there worshiping and doing their spiritual practices, I was only able to take photos and videos inside of a few of them. In Hinduism, seeing and being seen by the personification of a deity or by a saint is known as darshan. When we arrived at that first Kali Ma temple and I received the darshan of Ma, I saw her figure in the temple and I gazed into her eyes. I immediately burst into tears. It was such a powerful moment. Next, we flew to Kolkata, and this was my spacious hotel room, which I'm guessing was around 100 or 130 US per night, but all of that was coordinated by me for the 3 women facilitating the retreat. So I'm not sure, but this was a very luxurious suite. The princess bed was so cozy, and each participant on the retreat also had the option to order a custom sari made to wear in the temples. I decided to go with that option for the traditional sari because it's just a nice way to honor the culture and be respectful to the people there and the temples in general. And I wore my sari several times during the trip, but since coming back to the States, I have just had it in storage because I'm not able to put it on by myself. We went to 3 different temples in the Kolkata area. 2 were in Kolkata and they were Kali temples, and then the video on the right shows a different temple that we visited outside of Kolkata. After Kolkata, we flew again to Varanasi, which has been called Benares or Kashi, and it's considered the holiest city in India and the favorite city of Lord Shiva. In fact, it's considered so sacred that people from all around the world come to Varanasi on spiritual pilgrimage. And Hindus believe that dying and being cremated along the banks of the Ganga River in Varanasi will allow them to attain moksha, or the ultimate freedom from the cycle of reincarnation, the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. The energy of this place was really impossible to describe, and videos don't do it justice. Because it is considered so sacred, and a magical, liberating moment of spiritual pilgrimage to die here and be cremated here, there are cremation grounds all along the Ghats, which are those steps that you see leading down into the water. And so priests are here conducting ceremonies and burning bodies on these cremation grounds. We actually had the opportunity to walk through one of them, which was completely surreal. And our hotel in Varanasi was within walking distance of the Ganga. As you can see, the city comes right up to the edge of the river, and the Ghats lead down to the water. So we took this tour by boat, and not only were we viewing a spectacle, but we also were quite the spectacle. Even though Varanasi is a tourist destination, especially for spiritual tourism, it's not super common to see groups of white tourists this big in India, and even less common for those groups to all be female tourists. But even as a big group together, some of the facilitators had a bit of a hard time just because the culture in India is so patriarchal. We went walking one day in Varanasi and ended up at this gorgeous mosque, which was not open, so we didn't go inside. But the view with the birds and the Ganga was so majestic and peaceful. And on this same day, we took a long walking tour all around what's called the gullies, which are the tiny streets and corridors and alleyways that Varanasi is so famous for. And all along the gullies, there's absolutely incredible street art, which depicted various deities. And we also were able to visit several tiny temples that were only accessible on foot by literally ducking into holes in walls. In the mornings in Varanasi, our group gathered on a rooftop terrace at one of the hotels for us to do our morning yoga asana practices. There were 3 women facilitating this retreat. One of them is originally from California but has lived in Varanasi for the past decade, and she's fluent in Hindi. And she incorporates a lot of Hindu mythology, goddess Yogini symbolism, and elements of traditional Indian dance into the movement practices that she teaches. So the yoga practices that we shared over the course of this trip were all very focused on embodying the divine feminine. They were beautiful and flowy and fierce, honoring the divine feminine in all her forms. And those morning practices were so peaceful and quiet. We could hear and see cows hanging out in the streets and little monkeys climbing up on the telephone wires, zipping from rooftop to rooftop. Those quiet mornings were quite a contrast to the rest of the day, which usually looked a lot more like this. Yeah, this was probably the worst traffic jam that I saw when we were there, but there was so much traffic every single day. This was the norm whenever we would leave the hotel and just be walking in the street. We were seriously sitting in this traffic jam for at least 5, maybe 10 minutes. And technically there was someone there guiding traffic, but to my Western mind, this still just seemed like a free-for-all out in those streets. Because as you can see, there's no traffic lights, but there are bikes and motorbikes and tuk-tuks and trucks and cars and people on foot. And just total chaos. Tuk-tuks, by the way, are those little tricycle-type motorbikes that have the yellow hood on them. It's basically the equivalent of a taxi, and from what I understand, a lot of other countries use these. They also have them in Central America. This is one of the temples in Varanasi that was only accessible by foot. Each little temple is called a mandir, and in this clip you can see all the mandirs are built into the sides and base of this tree, which is so beautiful. And this bright orange color on the temples is created by putting sindoor powder on the temples. Sindoor is sometimes made with turmeric and sometimes vermilion, and it is considered sacred and used to remove obstacles. So it is put on a lot of temples and figures. There's some Shiva lingams here as well. Most neighborhoods in India will have their community temples, so I tried to be as respectful as possible and not directly film anyone that was doing their practice. Later on this day, we hiked up to another temple that was nestled high up into the Ghats and had been taken care of for 400 years by multiple generations of the same family of Brahmins, or priests. So the same family of priests stewarded this 400-year-old temple, and those stewards also gave our group a special ceremony known as a yajna, which is meant to purify the soul and bring multiple layers of healing on the physical, emotional, psychological, spiritual, and even ecological planes. Our time in Varanasi was incredibly, incredibly powerful. I absolutely would love to visit this very sacred city again. From Varanasi, we actually took an overnight passenger train to get to our next destination, which was Khajuraho. Now, we saw a lot of amazing temples on this trip, but the Tantric temples of Khajuraho were definitely one of the high ones on my list for favorites. The video clips that I have of them really don't do them justice because you have to be up close to see all the intricate carvings. And I'll insert some pictures here that show it better. Most of the carvings are very taboo. They depict nudity and intercourse, sexuality, even an orgy. And these were some of the oldest temples that we saw, which I am very curious about because modern day India is very patriarchal, and from what I've gleaned, sex is very taboo. Besides the temples, Khajuraho is a quiet country town, and it was a much needed change of pace from the chaos of the cities we were in before. So this view is from the rooftop of the hotel. We chilled on a lot of rooftops in India. And there was also a family of doggies, puppies at this guest house. You're really not supposed to engage with animals when traveling abroad for health reasons, but this little baby was so adorable. I just could not resist. And there were a lot more cows here. Like, there are cows everywhere in India, but because this was in the country, there was a lot more cows and more animals in general, which was really nice. And our guest house here was also amidst a village, so we could hear and see the local children playing in the streets, and sometimes they would call to us and kind of try to play with us, which was really sweet. And we also got to practice yoga in the morning on this rooftop as well, which was nice because in the mornings it was already pretty warm, like 70 degrees. Then, like I said, in the middle of the day it would get up to 80, sometimes 90 degrees. It was hot. On the next part of our adventure, we got to meet a local family. We walked into the neighboring village, and this lovely woman made dinner for us. It was impressive not only because she made enough food for a group of about 25 people, but she cooked it all over a fire, which is crazy. And then it was a farm-to-table meal. All of the food that she made for us, all of the ingredients for it literally came from her land. That it was grown there on her farm. So here she is making a flatbread called roti for us on the coals. And I'm sure that our host paid her very well, but our group also tipped her pretty well because this woman certainly deserved it. I mean, how awesome is that? This was by far my favorite meal. It was so delicious. I could feel the loving energy that she put into it, and I could not believe that she made all of that from scratch and cooked it over a fire. After we left Khajuraho, we went by bus to Jabalpur. It was a very long 8 or 9 hour bus ride. We finally got there at night, and we each got our own private villa. Funny thing about the bathrooms in India, they always have these buckets, because I think people there take showers differently than I do. And there's also no separation between the shower area and the rest of the bathroom floor. So when you shower, the water just kind of goes all over the bathroom floor, and then there's a squeegee to push the water into the drain. This villa was really nice and spacious. The bathroom was huge, and the bed was also really nice. This is the next morning outside of the villas. It was probably about 6 in the morning, so again, very tranquil, very peaceful. And Jabalpur was pretty far off of the beaten path, so not a lot of tourists around, but there was a lot of wildlife. And I actually think that this place we were staying was part of a nature preserve. I really wish that we would have had more time here, but we were only here for about 24 hours. In Jabalpur, we visited our final temple, the Temple of the 64 Yoginis. The retreat hosts told us that this temple is one of the few remaining Yogini temples in India where the statues are still intact for the most part. Now, historically, there have been many Yogini temples in India. However, most of them have been looted and destroyed, pieces taken and sold to museums. And today, only pieces and parts of what used to be great temples remain. So I was very happy to end our trip by visiting this beautiful temple where the majority of the Yogini statues are still intact, and several of them are in really good condition still. Some of them are definitely in disrepair or missing parts, but for the most part, the 64 statues are still intact and forming a circle around the temple, and then there's another smaller temple inside of that circle. I absolutely loved India. It was so overstimulating and overwhelming that it's honestly taken me all of the past 2 years to fully process the experience. When I got back to the United States, I just remember feeling so dazed, like I had been in a completely different dimension. I've traveled to a handful of other countries, but it's safe to say that India is where I felt the most strong culture shock and also the most intense jet lag on coming back home. But I feel so grateful and lucky to have had this experience despite the cultural barriers, the language barrier, the financial investment barrier, and the big step I had to take out of my comfort zone. It was an enriching and amazing opportunity to learn more about the divine feminine mysteries and to share the experience with a group of wonderful, like-minded humans. So thank you for watching and coming along on the adventure with me. The light in me sees and honors the light and the love in you. Namaste. I'll talk to you soon, and blessed be. With all my love, Paisley Parvati Devi.